Dear Agni Yogis, our fast-moving and above all extremely complicated time requires, and rightly so, short and concise solutions. Today, no active man in the thick of life has the leisure anymore to track down entangled threads of thought and to study page-long, small print instructions for use for the spiritual life. This urgent need for a simple recipe for the growth of your spirit we now propose to satisfy. You may actually sum up the entire practice of Agni Yoga, and indeed of all world religions, in one single exercise. You can live as if God, Agni Yoga says, as if your teacher were by your side. You can imagine him watching you. You may ask yourself, how would I behave if Jesus were standing at my side? You do not have to do any more than that. Then you will always act worthily and properly. You do not need any rituals or ceremonies. You do not have to go to church, read any scriptures, or change your everyday life in any way. The entire spiritual practice is comprised in this one exercise. You are looking for a cure-all for all kinds of diseases, temptation, and distress. Here it is. This is true not only for a disciple in the esoteric sense, but for every ordinary practitioner of a faith as well. The one keeps his teacher, the other God as he understands him, a third Jesus or a great saint, and yet another his hero or his ideal constantly before his eyes. Therefore, this exercise belongs to both series, the path of the disciple and spiritual exercises. We give it so much space because over thousands of years it has proven to be particularly fruitful. Furthermore, by practicing it, you can learn a lot about the higher worlds and their relationship to the material level. It is an age-old exercise to live in the constant presence of God. This was part of the spiritual practice at all times and in all religions and teachings of wisdom. Let us look at some examples. Plato has practiced this exercise. They ignore the most important possibility, which transforms the human consciousness. They forget that continuous, concentrated thought about what one reveres most is the surest way. There is no need to burden the consciousness with petty details. One must first of all concentrate upon what has been chosen as the leading concept. When people learn to keep their ultimate goal continuously in mind, they will acquire a better kind of memory, one that may be called synthesized. One need only concentrate. Such an achievement is possible even amidst earthly tribulations. A strong anchor can save a ship even during a storm. The thinker constantly thought about his chosen muse. He did not hide the fact that in days of turmoil he remained firm only because of her, who was his source of strength. The thinker said, "Learn to revere the muses who help you to become heroes. The muses lead you to heroic deeds. They accompany you in battle and in labor, and greet you with garlands of victory. The muses note your heroic deeds and sacrifices. The muses transform your sufferings into beauty. The muses will not abandon those who revere them. Know how to serve the muses, the gatekeepers of the beautiful." The Bible advises, "I have set the Lord always before my face, for he is at my right hand, that I shall not be shaken." According to the rule of Saint Benedict, it is one of the instruments of good works be aware that God's gaze is upon you wherever you may be. Furthermore, let us hear about the spiritual world of Saint Catherine of Siena. During housework, she imagined to serve not her family, but Jesus and his disciples. During her labor, she constantly thought of her husband, Christ, whom she served directly with her work. So when she did work in the kitchen or carried the food to the table, she remained always in the most holy, and she always strengthened herself by the presence of the Redeemer. Saint Clara Fey taught, "Walking in the presence of God is the easiest, the safest, and the fastest means of perfection." Alphonse Rodriguez, Teresa of Avila, Francis of Sales, Gerhard Tersteegen, and many other saints also practice this exercise. In our time, the great theologian Martin Niemöller asked himself in all his actions, "What would Jesus say to that?" A true pioneer and great teacher of the life in God's presence was the Carmelite monk Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection. The most sacred, the simplest, and the most necessary exercise in the life of the Spirit is to live in the presence of God. For you shall have your joy in his divine company and get used to it by addressing him in a humble way, communicating with him with loving affection of heart, at any time, even every moment. He was no more than an insignificant lay brother. He worked in the kitchen of his monastery, where there was catering for more than 100 monks. In the midst of this exhausting and hectic work, he sanctified himself by the practice of the visualization of God. With time, Brother Lawrence became a spiritual counselor and guide to many. The real and special character of Brother Lawrence was the constant visualization of God. and the quiet, intimate communion with God, which through manifold practice has become a habit and entirely natural for him. His life was nothing other than a constant visualization of God and a childlike, pure walking before God. Even these days, you may read with much benefit the chapter on Brother Lawrence in Gerhard Terstegen's book, Selected Biographies of Holy Souls. There you find quotes from his words and writings. We shall cite some of his sayings in the course of this broadcasting. If instead of God you read teacher, they are very much up to date, even today. The precursor of Agni Yoga, the teachings of the temple, transmitted by Mahatma Hilarion, puts the following core message, the avataric mantra, at the center of daily practice. I will endeavor to realize the presence of the avatar as a living power in my life. Let all who feel and believe the truth of the presence of a redeeming cosmic force repeat the above daily and constantly. The earnest endeavor to realize his presence daily will help in his manifestation. This is a great promise. When more and more people behave as if a Mahatma were at their side, we will create an environment around us so pure that one day a member of the Brotherhood may actually physically incarnate in our midst. He could then personally guide and govern us to our own great benefit, as it once was in old Egypt, and thus create a new, higher culture. You see, our exercise is more than just a little private pleasure. We are actually preparing the creation of the new world. Agni Yoga is based on this age-old tradition and continues and refines it. I do not think I am yet ready to live near God. Yes, speaking of the presence of God means indeed aiming too high. God, as the head of the universe, is responsible for billions and billions of living beings. He cannot take care personally of you, little worm. Others are responsible for this. Therefore, more appropriate is the concept, practice to live in the continuous presence of your teacher. Thus, the exercise runs today. Live the way you would live if your teacher were constantly standing next to or behind you. Man must freely choose to be permeated with the presence of the great teachers. Command your heart to come as close as possible to the teacher. If you have to affirm the teacher in words, begin to converse with him as if he were right beside you. We may call this practice a virtual path. You imagine something. You live as if the Master were present. Thereby you create not a material, but, as we shall discuss shortly, an equally effective spiritual reality. It is useful to hold constantly in imagination before oneself the image of the teacher, as that which is the most precious to bind you with the Supreme.